evening, everyone. Welcome to Ham Radio Basics Live, Season 1, Episode 7. Very special guest, Ria from Rias Ham Shack. Ria, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fine. It was a beautiful sunny day. How about you?
It was a chilly sunny day here in Florida. It was 55, and I had a friend of mine from North come down here for vacation, and it's like, no, Bill. She says, no, 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 no. Dial up the warm weather here. So, first of all, I want to give you some congratulations. You renamed your channel. I really like the name of the channel now.
Yeah. So do you want a story of why I renamed the channel?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now I do a radio show with WRMI Legends, right? And it
Right.
used to be on WTWW, but of course that whole thing, folded down. And we went over to WRMI. Jeff White is very gracious, and Ted Randall basically, got us all in there. I'm gonna do a little tweaking on rebranding because I want to put WRMI as well too, because it's kind of like the whole radio show and how should I put video? I almost said TV show, radio show, and YouTube channel, kind of like meshing with each other. So I'm gonna redo the branding. So the reason it went to Rias Ham Shack is because I was talking with Ted, and he was like, "Well, everybody knows you as Rias Ham Shack. Isn't your show name Rias Ham Shack?" I'm like, "No." He said you should call it that because it rolls better off the tongue. And then I said Rias Ham Shack, Rias Shack Ham Radio, Rias Ham Shack. Okay, yeah. And then I asked the audience, and people said yes, it should be that. So that's why I went with it.
Well, I think it's real good, and I think as far as like the YouTube algorithm, because I've been in this gig for a while. I have we were talking before the show. I have my drone channel's been going on 6 years, and I think I got a handle down. I think it'll do fine with the algorithm. You're changing your name. I think that's gonna be a plus. I don't think it's gonna be a minus. Especially you use the words Ham Shack, and boom, you're gonna get people jump in on there when you're using your keywords. So, but anyway, one of the questions I like to ask everybody that I have on the show: how did you get started in ham radio?
This is a good question. So, my dad was a shortwave listener, and he kind of like I was around him. We didn't have really complicated shortwave equipment. He had like a broadcast radio with shortwave bands, but we would listen to the shortwaves. We listened to the BBC, Voice of America, All India Radio, because our heritage is Indian, and we listened to the program from the motherland. And then he kind of like introduced me to that. So I got interested. I got interested in DXing. Then my uncle was a big time CBer. He had like a Moonraker 4 on his hardware, his home/hardware store, and he had CBs and trucks, and we got CBs. I really wasn't into that too much, but my mom, we used to talk to my mom when she worked the late shift at the hospital. So that was one thing. But then it wasn't until secondary school, there were clubs. I got introduced by a teacher. So the teacher was a ham, and then just demonstrated ham radio. And then I kind of like later on just, got my license. I was like 17, I think. So yeah, so I got my license as a teenager. It's a difficult process in my old country in Trinidad and Tobago. It's literally you have to pay like $100 American dollars to take the exam, pass or fail. You wait 3 or 4 months for the results from England, and then you take that certificate up to the telecommunications office, and then you could do Morse code. I wanted to do Morse code. I ended up taking a codeless license because the examiner didn't show up. So I went back the next month and passed the code test. And then, I basically became licensed. And then I moved to the States in the late 90s. And then, I got licensed here, and the rest is history.
Well, how did you find the process? I know, and it really sounds very convoluted and complex from where you came from Trinidad and Tobago, over here in the United States. I mean, it must have been kind of like you breathed a sigh of relief when you had to study for your exams here.
So, yes and no. Remember, I wasn't born here. So when I came over here, I initially didn't have a social security number, and that was resolved in a couple of months because it takes a couple of months. It's strange because I couldn't even apply for a job. Okay. But what happened was when I came here, I went to a local club, the Kings County Repeater Association, and that was in Brooklyn. And they I went to take the exam, and I was signing up the paperwork, and I was like, well, so what do you put here that says taxpayer ID? And they said, oh, you put your social. I'm like, I don't have one yet. They say, well, you can't take the exam. I was like, what? I knew other foreigners who took the exam. Okay. And then, yeah, they turned me away. I got so mad. I went to the ARRL. I emailed Jim Haney, the president, and he basically threw his hands up in the air at that time. He was very not helpful. And I didn't even know who Dave Sumner was at that time, to be honest. But anyway, so I came back a month later when I did get my social security number from the Social Security Administration, which is bleep, 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 bleep. Okay. Yeah. And then I put it on the form and I passed the technician in general. And then I said, okay, it's time to go home. They said, no, take the extra. And I'm like, nah, I want to go home. I said the subway is going to be, it's going to be late and the subways are going to be kind of iffy at night. They said, no, take the extra. I'm like, all right. I took the extra. I passed the extra. So, but it's kind of like the process here is a lot better in terms of you have volunteer examiners, you have, you could take an exam at a HamFest. You don't have to wait for the results. Now you could do it online, which is something I pushed for at the ARRL. And initially one of the previous CEOs wasn't taking it until eventually he kind of got nudged into it. And then we kind of just, the exams, I'm a VE, I'm accredited with 3 VCs now, with ARRL, with Laurel, and also GLARG. And I do VE exams, and it's a very, very nice process compared to what we had to go through. Although in Trinidad now they use the American VE exams and use that for license.
Okay. I noticed that, and I can't help because this is one of my, I don't know if you want to use the word pet peeves, and I loved your video on this when you talked about, are we putting too much pressure to get new hams and the whole thing around that? That's kind of been a focal point for me because I noticed, one of the things that I noticed, and this kind of fits in conjunction with your video, is, are you with a good club? Because if you're with a good club, you'll hook up with an Elmer, and you'll get the nice kind of mentorship that you need.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not with a good club, look out, okay? Because I know, for example, I'm a member of 2 clubs down here in the area. One of them is, in me being 64 years old, I am definitely the youngest member at that club, okay?
Right.
And the other club, there's guys in their 30s and 40s and 50s over there, and it's much more, I think, age appropriate, and there's a lot more communication, connection, that kind of thing. What's your take on all that?
So, when I knew a little bit about clubs before I took on the role at the ARRL, and now I know a lot about clubs, more than you want to know about clubs. And I'll tell you, there are good and bad clubs. I'm just kidding. Every club is good. There are clubs who succeed and there are clubs who kind of struggle. Okay. I didn't really mean they're bad clubs. There are clubs who succeed and there are clubs who struggle. And I think every club needs help in terms of, getting their members. And I think every club wants to succeed. But I'll tell you, I've encountered some clubs that I've been a member of where their whole mission was basically to go into meetings and sit around and talk for an hour and then, eat donuts and go home. Then you have clubs who really got into, they really got into evangelizing ham radio. They went and they sought out speakers, they sought out new members, and they they went and they really saw things. Now, this is what I was talking about in the video. I think we do a disservice by just basically telling people to cram a test, get a ham license, and then leave them on their own to sink or swim. I think this, because I look at the people who got the ham radio license at the same VE session, and only like 3 of them are still licensed. There were probably like 12 or 15 of them at that VE session.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I can't help and see that's I agree with you 100% because,
Yeah.
you know, if there's no follow up, if
Mhm.
there's no, you know, mentorship, Elmering going on, you
Yeah.
know, you're gonna flounder. And to me, I'm real fortunate because the first club that I joined was one that was just, it was, they very aloof, you know, some do, some succeed, some don't. This is one that doesn't succeed. Okay, they had a very out of date website. You had to do everything either in person or by mail. There was no application online. I mean, it was just, you know, go on down the list. I mean, it just, they had very old equipment. Some of it, a lot of it did not work properly. I mean, you know, there was just a whole, you know, it was ripe for me not to succeed with ham radio, but I wanted to, and I kept pushing. And what kind of was my saving grace at the time, I found YouTube, and I found Josh, I found Jason, I found, you know, I everybody out there, and you know, especially, you know, and I kind of focus on Josh and Jason, you know, because I learned so much of them. Eric from Ham Radio Concepts as well. You know, it just really, it kind of resonated with me because I acted like a sponge, and I realized, you know, at that time that was my Elmer. That was how I wanted to, you know, was going to grow.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, there are clubs who really do a great job at evangelizing, and some I think need a little help. And I think there are clubs that you know, and quite frankly, some clubs don't really have the resources, whether it's willing volunteers or time or money. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that especially today as well, you have a lot of clubs facing, I don't want to call it competition, but they're facing alternative paths to enlightenment in ham radio, namely YouTube and other media. So and that's okay. I mean, you know, some people need a different path, and I enjoy making YouTube videos to help people. But sometimes you need a little social interaction, and you need to find a friendly club, which is I recommend some good friendly clubs.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I got started with ham radio when I moved to Florida in 2011. I met a beautiful woman. We got married. Uh, True story. I met her 15 days later. We got married. Been married for 12 years. Okay. Love of my life. Woman has a heart of gold. Just absolutely fantastic. But I came from up north. I came from Ohio and didn't have to worry about this thing called hurricanes.
Hmm.
Well, you come down to Florida, you know, and in a hurry, you know, I was wanted to get up to speed because you have to prep for hurricane season. And one of the things they talk about is having some kind of alternate form of communication. And I looked, and the only reliable alternate form of communication was ham radio. Okay. And
Right.
that's how I got into it. And I got lucky. I found a good course online that rotated the question pool. So, you know, it wasn't really memorization, but, you know, I got that head knowledge in rapid order. Within a year or so, I passed all 3 exams. And, you know, but
Yeah.
then there was a point, you know, I switched companies for my job. You know, we had, my daughter got married, had a granddaughter, you know, just, you know, life happens. And,
Yeah, life happens. Yeah.
you know, and finally, you know, I'm at a point where, you know, I wanted to get into it, and I have, and I've, you know, and I, like you, I don't dive in with just, you know, 1 foot. I go in with both feet, and you know, I want to fully immerse myself. And one of the reasons I started my channel was, you know, one of the things, and it's kind of the same reason why I started my drone channel as well too. You know, I see a lot of guys out there putting some great, fantastic videos, but you know, realizing people's attention span isn't 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and you got to cut that time down. And that's one of the things that I wanted to do, was just, kind of be more succinct, short. And that's why a lot of my drone videos are like 10 minutes or less. And I've been trying to do the same with my ham radio videos as well. So what prompted you to go ahead and start your YouTube channel? Was it, you were on the radio show, or, vice versa, or how'd that start?
So the YouTube channel, I actually started a YouTube channel because I got a Flex radio and I started to stream when I was on the air. And then I also then began to give talks about radio stuff, and a lot of clubs were asking me for things to do. And I began to figure, well, maybe I should put this content to a wider audience. And as a result, I decided to post videos to my YouTube channel. The first video was poorly lit, and it had bad audio. And then I uploaded some other presentations I made, and then I started doing Q&A because people asked me stuff, and that's how the channel began rolling and rolling and rolling. So that's essentially why I got into YouTube. I've been also in video and television production. I worked at a large cable TV network. And then sometimes I would actually get in the studio and help out with stuff. And sometimes work on projects and stuff too. So I learned a little bit. I've been editing videos since I would say 2002 or so. I've been editing. So I learned editing. I actually took courses on how to edit videos. And I run the media ministry at my church. So during the pandemic, I actually got into that role and live stream all the services and everything, and fixed up all the audio. And I guess that kind of gave me inspiration to go and, do YouTube. It doesn't really make a lot of money, so to speak, but the thing is, it's nice to hear people that they learn something.
And I agree with you, because I know I'm not in it for the money.
Right.
I know with what I get from, I'm not quite I don't have quite enough hours on this channel yet, but on my drone channel I do. But it's barely enough to put, pay for the heat and the light. It's just it's nice. The satisfaction I get is from being able to help people. And I think you too, you realize, when you get a comment back, either from one of your videos or somebody on Twitter says, got to really thank you for that video. It really helped me out. It's really satisfying to be able to do that. And I think part of it comes from the fact my dad was a elementary art teacher for almost 40 years. And one of the pieces of advice he gave me, he said, "Bill, don't get into teaching. Don't be a teacher." Well, I ended up in a roundabout way becoming a teacher, and I really like how I'm helping people out, and I think you get the satisfaction from that too, is from what I'm seeing.
Yeah. So my dad was a teacher, and he taught. So he taught two things. He used to teach. He actually taught four things, but when I was a kid, I remember him teaching technical drawing, like drafting. And then he taught metalwork, welding and such like that. And his students actually ended up becoming welders, and they made good money. And then he went and started to teach social studies and history. So, but he enjoyed the camaraderie he had with his students, and satisfaction that his students. It's funny. Okay, let me tell you a funny story. He said that how so the teachers, usually they call the teachers in Trinidad sir or miss, right? So when you see a teacher in public, like in a grocery store or on the street, you'd say, "Sir, how are you doing?" Okay, or "Miss, how are you doing?" So my dad used to call him sir, but it's like this. So one time, so students would call him out and stuff like that. And people, like one guy on a welding truck was passing by, and he say, "Hey, sir, how you doing?" He said, and my dad would say, "Good." He said, "Well, I just want to let you know I got this nice job as a welder. Okay, welding pipelines, like gas pipelines, and that's really, really good money."
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, one time the prison van was passing, People but yelled out, "Sir." So
Oh,
probably one of his students went to prison.
oh my gosh.
Okay.
That yeah. That's a good story.
Yeah.
I gotta say this. We were this years ago. We were
Uh-huh.
on a family vacation at Busch Gardens over in Virginia,
Yes, I've been there.
and I was 18. I was getting ready to go to college, and lo and behold, my dad was always Mr. Heroes. Everybody called him Mr. Heroes.
Mhm.
Okay, here we hear out loud, Mr. Heroes, how are you? Here
Yeah.
it is this man with his wife and children. Here he had my dad as a teacher like X number of years ago and
Mm.
recognized him. I mean, I was born and raised over in Pittsburgh. Here we are hundreds of miles away, and we run into somebody that my dad had in school. That just kind of blew me away. That was one of those same kind of moments. It just absolutely blew me away. So, what kind of equipment do you have, Ria? What kind of radio HTs and everything do you have?
Yeah. So for HTs, I have a few of them that I use in my regular rotation. I use my Kenwood D74 most of all these days. I have a Yaesu VX5 that I've had I actually bought it at Barry Electronics in New York City back in like the year 2000. And I love that radio. I dropped that off my balcony 13 floors up, and it still survived and it works well. I have a couple of Baofangs. Okay. So that's handheld radios. I have a couple DMR radios I use occasionally. I used to be more active on DMR. HF wise, for the longest time, I've used Icom. I have Icom 7000, 746, 756 Pro 3. And then I got into Flex. So now I have the Flex 6700, which is my mainstay of HF radio and HF and 6 meters. I have the Icom 705 I use for, like portable operations. I do portable operations. I've never done a POTA activation. I've operated from parks. I've never done a POTA activation. So I'm going to cross that off my list. So that's pretty much what I use, you know. Other than that, I've had a couple home built radios like the Pixies. I've had Soft Rock SDR kits that I built and I used to use that on PSK 31.
One of my I don't want to call it a nasty habit, but one of the things that I like to spend quite a bit of money on is antennas. I call myself the antenna king. You name it, I have it. Okay. I have a Chameleon MPass 2.0. I have pretty much every end fed half wave known to man and then some sitting in a drawer. I mean, you name it, I have it. I have some loop antennas. I mean, it's just it's a collection. Okay. And I told my wife, I said, just think of it as a collection. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and like you, one of the things that I haven't done is POTA, and that's one of the things that's on my list of things to do this year. Is I'm going to do that. We have a little bit more of a challenge doing POTA down here in Florida because especially right now this time of year, and it's happened early. And every time you're near a body of water in the state of Florida, you have to be wary because there's alligators. Okay. It's
Yes.
just a fact of life. It's one of those things. I mean, what was it? We had a lady, county, two counties south of us here,
Yeah.
85. She's walking her dog by the pond, and an alligator came up and tried to get the dog, didn't get the dog, but got her. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, she didn't make it. And that's one of these things that, I tell people, especially if you're coming down to visit, or we have a Facebook group of the retirement community that we live in down here. And it's one of the things I post for new people. I said,
Mhm.
do not walk near bodies of water. Okay. Just don't do it. And especially right now, this time of year, it's mating season and they're super aggressive and, and that's one of the things. So I'm going to kind of bide my time as far as doing that. But yeah, I want to do a POTA. I have so many of my friends have encouraged me to do that. And I'm like, I'm just going to go ahead and bite the bullet and do that.
Yeah. So, my mom lives in Florida, as you know, and yeah, she's like, she sees alligators crossing the road too.
Oh yeah. It's just, it's just one of those things, every day somebody posts a picture, from our development, and there were some baby gators there. And I'm like, okay, you need to be real careful. That's like akin to a mama bear around cubs. It's the same thing. I said, you just back off. Well, one of the things that I did find out down here, and a lot of people didn't know that. They thought, oh, if a trapper comes, they're going to relocate these gators. They don't relocate these gators.
No.
Okay. And the thing is, because they could introduce an adult into a younger population, which wouldn't be good, or vice versa. And, it's just not a good thing. So, they euthanize the alligator, which, especially, if they've made contact with humans, that's one of the things that they just gone, done, history. I know one of the things we had, you'd mentioned to me, you didn't get a chance to go to HamCation. I didn't either, because, and I mean, Orlando's an hour away from where I live, and I didn't go because that weekend was my wedding anniversary. It just, yeah. So, but one of the things that I am going to do is, we're getting scheduled. I already got media credentials to go up for HamVention up in Dayton. And what's nice about Dayton is it's about an hour outside of Columbus. And, my two sons and my daughter, son-in-law, and two granddaughters in there. We're going to get a chance to meet our granddaughter that was born back in December. We were up there for a week and missed her by 2 days. We had to come back. So,
man.
Yeah, okay. That was a real bummer. We were pretty bummed out, but that's one of the nice things. Are you planning on going to HamVention this year?
I am. So for the past few years, I've been going to ARL, and I kind of don't know if I'll be going with the league this year, but I plan to go regardless. I always stay with the contesters at Hope Hotel, and I'm in that crowd. So, but yeah, I usually go. I actually went to HamCation last year, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, everybody said this year, talking about attendance, because I was talking to Jason, and I also had Mike on, and I also had Steve from Temporarily Offline, and they kind of thought the numbers were pretty good for the numbers of people that they saw there compared to pre-COVID, before COVID. Which is encouraging. I always, I'm a stats guy. I'm a nerd like that. And I look at these things, and actually numbers have, really kind of gone up, which is a good thing. That's one thing I'm really excited about. But one of the things, I think it was Anthony I had on last week. And I think one of the things that either he or Mike told me was, Orlando's just like maybe a couple of buildings. But you go to Dayton and it's like 4 or 5, and he says, have your walking shoes on. Okay. You're going to do a lot of walking and then some when you go to Dayton.
But how long have you been to Dayton? Like how many years?
I haven't been to Dayton before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're at a new venue compared to previous years. And previous years they were at Hara Arena and Trotwood. And
okay.
That was a different experience. I do think that the Greene County Fairgrounds is better. It's a little more, I think it's a little more expansive, and it's not dilapidated like how Hara Arena was, because they demolished Hara Arena. But Hara Arena, everything was under one roof, but you had like a number of different things, but it was still big, But yeah, you walk there, you walk in the main exhibit, the different exhibit buildings. Then you have the boneyard, the flea market, where you walk through, and that one is literally a lot. So yeah,
it's real interesting because I watched Mike put out a video, K8MRD. I keep saying Mike, but he was just at Houston had a Ham Fest, and it was pretty much all in one building. And it was real interesting. He went by a lot of the tables. I mean, one man's treasure is another man's junk, and so forth. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff to go through if you're looking at things like this. And, and I talked to another guy who found some treasures there. I mean, got some real really good things. But it's kind of like hit or miss. I think a lot of the times with what you could see out at I call them the swap tables. But one of the things that I found, which I think is really interesting, and I first saw it, I think it was on one of Jason's video, or maybe Steve from Temporary Offline, when they went to Huntsville. Yeah, is it Huntsville? Or
Yeah,
in Alabama?
Huntsville, yeah.
Yeah, when they went there, because they call it the world's friendliest ham fest.
Right.
We had a testing table, which I had not seen before, because it wasn't, the last time I went to HamCation in Orlando, I didn't see one there, but they had a testing table for equipment. And I just thought that was just such a cool thing to be able to do that. Now, I think the rule is going to apply to me again this year. Is usually when I would drive to something like this, I would never find anything, going through the tables, or never,
Yeah.
going through the halls and anything. But if I fly, I know I'll find something, and it'll be too big. That's just like a Murphy's Law kind of thing.
I'm gonna drive. I mean, I enjoyed my drive last year. Jury's out on whether I'll take my car. I mean, I have a new car now, and I could take out. I had my old Tesla, and then I have a new Tesla now. I could take it. It's really, it's a nice drive. I just don't know if I want to put all those miles on a car. But yeah, I will drive definitely this year, because it's just, for me, it's not that far, one. And then it's like 9 hours drive. And then two, I get the use of my own car. I also get to take things home, and I have seen big things that I would like to take home. If I take my car, I might take a trailer and just either rent or buy a trailer.
So is there anything that in particular that you're looking for when you go to something like this? And I'll answer that question after you're done. But I mean, is there something that's on your list that you really, if you see it, I'm laying my money down on the table.
So why I'm saying I'm bringing a trailer, I'm kind of looking for antennas for satellite and EME. Probably not antennas, but like H-frames, because I have antennas for those I need to put up. And I want to see if there's anything there, because HF, I do a lot of HF, but I want to get into the more exotic ham radio.
Well, I'm now, and this leads me to, well, one of the things that I'm looking for is a Yaesu VX7. Okay. And it's just like, I had one when I first started, but it was just like boom over my head. And I decided, I just ended up selling it because it was just too much for me at the time.
I have a VX7 on the kitchen counter there.
Oh, wow. Well, I go out there and I spy them out on eBay and everything. And I'm like,
it's a nice radio.
Yeah, it is a real nice radio.
Yeah.
And I kick myself for doing that. So that's kind of on my list. And getting to your, telling us about taking your trailer and antennas and everything. One of the things, Icom's come out with their IC905.
Right.
And I've talked to Mike, I've talked to Jason, I talked to Anthony last week about that. What are your thoughts on that?
I have some thoughts, and I'll tell you what I think. I think it's great. I think it's also going to make some people kind of unhappy, but I think it's great. First of all, the price I think is phenomenal for what you get, because I used to do roving with Andrea K2EZ, but her life has gotten a lot busy. She's in Texas a lot now, so but she lives right up the road for me. I think it's great. I think it really, really democratizes the microwave bands, right? And we need to put activity on those, because I think if we don't put activity on those are ripe for the taking. But I think it's great. I think, though, however, you're going to have some people who are kind of like, I want to say elitist kind of like way, that's going to say, well, it's too easy now to get into those bands, but who cares? I like that, people could do that now. And I think what Icom did with making the control similar to the 705 was absolutely brilliant, because you're familiar with it. I think the power over Ethernet was absolutely brilliant, because let's face it, you cannot find low loss coax at a good price to do there. But if you put the transmitter for 10 gigahertz or the other bands up, at the top of the mast, and you run power over Ethernet, that's great. That's really great. I think they have a winner in terms of innovation. However, I'm saving my pennies for that radio. I think that time will tell whether it sells a lot, but I have a feeling that it's gonna have a good niche, so to speak. And I'm gonna grab one before there's any chance of it being discontinued.
You know, I do agree with you,
Yeah.
but one of the concerns, I think Mike raised it and Anthony talked about it as well, was having a good microwave community to support you. I know, and I think Josh talked about it on his 905 video, that out in California they do have a pretty good microwave community out there, but down here, I don't know of anybody doing that. And I think that was I don't know if I use the word reservation, but that was just like, one of the points that people just want to kind of like pause and think and everything. But I agree with you. I think the technology is exciting. I think it's great. And, one of the things I always tell people, take a step back. Icom is basically a Japanese company. Okay.
Mhm.
And this is being made, this is being made, first of all, for consumers in Japan. All right. And that's what I tell people. You go out to any of the Icom ads, what do you see? It's in Japanese and you'll see the word Icom, but then everything's in Japanese because it's made for that market. And it's something that is big over there. I think it's an exciting concept. I think as far as the cost, I think I'm going to have to maybe, save a lot of pennies for something like that. But one of the things that I really like about it, and as you pointed out, that form factor, like the 705, I mean, that just the head, that's just I probably want to use the word genius on Icom's part. I think they really did their homework on this, and it's gonna. But what I think is going to happen is, I think at first, I think you're going to not see a lot of early adopters. You're going to want to see, some of our guys like maybe Josh or who knew, or Eric or somebody, or Jason,
Or me.
or you get one of them from Icom to test.
Oh no, yeah. No, I'm not gonna get one from Icom to test. I'm gonna buy one.
Oh, I know you'll buy one. Well, that's one of the things that I think a lot of people would be interested in because, for example, and I know, we were talking drones and, and I know you fly drones. It's like a lot of people, I get, when the latest DJI drone comes out, I've already ordered it before the website is fully operational. And, and I get it. And one of the things people do is they look at my channel and they look to see how my experience was before I buy something like that. And I think that's what we're going to see here with the 905.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot of people, hold back a little bit, who may have the money, but they want to see how it works. They want to see it in action. And I think that's one of the things. I'm anxious to go to Dayton to see this, to talk to them, and to get some kind of a demo on it, for what it's worth. But yeah, I think you're right. It's an exciting piece of technology. I think, you're gonna hold on to your piggy banks there, folks, because it's gonna cost you a pretty penny, but I think it's gonna be worth it. I really do.
So I think it's going to be a niche. It's not going to sell like an Icom 7300.
Right.
Let's get that out of the way. I think it's going to be a niche, and I think Icom is probably going to produce it in that volume with that mindset and price it that way. I think definitely it's going to have a following, but in terms of the microwave community, what I think is going to happen is that if enough people buy this radio, they're going to, get into a world of amateur radio that they've never experienced before. I kind of got into this with Andrea with the roving, and I didn't realize how much fun it was. Like literally, we'd be driving all over the place and making contacts. Whereas I'm accustomed to sitting in my chair and just blasting away on HF. This one, you have to drive to the hilltop, you make a sked, and then you try to get somebody, and then you say Roger, 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 Roger to get them confirmed, okay? Or you're doing it on CW. This was a whole new world for me, and it's a little more exotic ham radio. But I agree, it's not going to be a barn burner like the 7300. I do think though that it might encourage a few more people. Remains to see how many. I do think including 2 meters and 77s was brilliant, because that'll open the radio to regular use. 1296 was a good one too. That band is under threat, by the way, so it's better that we get more use of it. And I think generally it's a good idea. I just hope that catches on. Other manufacturers should be trying to introduce something like this. And I do think the homebrew community needs to kind of get something that could be, accessible as well too. So
I think we'll be seeing something along those lines. And still in the Icom mode here. One of the things that I was just about ready to pull the trigger on getting a 7100, and then poof, gone, and just like I vapors out into thin air. And then I had a friend who told me that you'll probably see them back this summer, and a lot of it was due to the the part shortage, and because I know that's why Yaesu discontinued a couple of their recent announcements, because of part shortages, because they just simply don't have the parts right now.
Yeah, that AKM factory fire really did a number on a lot of different things, and I've seen things I can't say under NDA, but I've seen a lot of different consumer products that have been basically held back because of parts shortages. I mean, it's a well-known thing in the industry right now.
Yeah, I had to wait for and that was very interesting, because last year my wife desperately needed to get a new car, and she had a 2009 Saturn. The air conditioning died on it. To get it fixed was going to cost more than the car was worth. So we ordered her a Toyota Corolla crossover. It's their first SUV for Corolla, and had to wait almost 2 months. Well, I mean, and it was right in the middle of summertime, and Florida in the summertime, it is just brutal. She would come home and need to get a shower. I mean, it was just that bad. So, my hat's off to her for waiting for that. I had to wait for mine too. I got a Highlander, and it took me about 2.5, 3 months to get that in. I wasn't under the gun. I had timed it to when my lease was up, that when it would come in, and that all worked out really well. So, kind of changing up, to Yaesu, the Yaesu side of things. I know a lot of people, like when I first got started, and I got out there, and people said, you need to get an Icom because their menu systems are easier compared to Yaesu. Says, no, you need to get a Yaesu because they have better filtering than the Icoms do. And it was like the he said, she said, all that. Oh my gosh, my head was about to explode. It really was.
Yeah, I see. So each of these radios have their cult followings. I'll tell you, Icom. I find that Icom generally is popular because they're easy to use, and they're, they have a lot of high-tech features, advanced features that are bring to the mainstream. Yaesu, I see Yaesu as being more, how should I put it? They specialize a lot in ergonomics, in terms of traditional ergonomics. If you feel like if you spin a knob on an Icom radio and you spin the same knob on the Yaesu knob is heavier and feels like you're turning one of those old stereos, the old stereos with the big tuning knob, right? They're heavier and a lot more fluid, whereas the Yaesu tends to be a little more lighter. And you'll find that Yaesu used to be the staple in a lot of contest shacks until Elecraft came along. So they kind of rested on that for a while. I think they slipped a little. And then they're trying to make it back with the FTDX10 and such, but I don't think they've quite caught on yet. I've seen a number of contesters use them. That's on the HF side. On the VHF side, they've made some very, very good ruggedized handhelds. I mean, Yaesu has made some handhelds, like you said, your VX7, your Unicorn. They've, you drop that thing, you you submerge it, it'll still be alive when it's done. You do that with like an ID51, probably still will work, but it might not be the same as Yaesu, although I think they're kind of doing some of that. But Icom tends to excel in like the advanced features,
Mm-hmm.
And the bells and whistles like that. Although I see Yaesu catching up, and they're kind of like back and forth, competing with each other. So
One of the things that I think a lot of people, well, for example, I just literally the other day got a Yaesu FT891. That's
yeah,
one that was on my list. That was on my unicorn list. And almost as soon as I got it from DX Engineering because that's who had it in stock at the time.
right,
And it was interesting. Almost as soon as I got it, just for grins and giggles, I went back out to the websites. Okay, Gigaparts wasn't available. Ham Radio Outlet wasn't available. Main trading wasn't available. And then DX Engineering, they said, click to be notified wasn't available. I was like, wow, okay.
yeah,
I was like, talk about incredible timing. I mean, it was just literally, it was incredible that I was able to get that when I did.
right, yeah, and but I think that Icom also, Icom and what Ray Novak is doing really, he has a lot of public support for the amateur community. So I give them great props for that. They support a lot of amateur radio things in the community, and I really appreciate that they're around to do that,
You
because I
know,
think by
yeah.
and large you know a lot of amateur radio would fall by the wayside without that kind of support.
I agree. I agree 100%. Ria.
Yeah.
It's so nice. Ray is accessible, and I
Right.
think that's and I'll harken back to my interaction with the drone community because we used to have some people that we knew from DJI, and I would have them on the show. They have long since left DJI, and they really have kind of centralized their focus, and everything's pretty much over in mainland China right now, over in Shenzhen.
Yeah.
But here, having accessibility like Ray and his willingness to come on channels and talk and just be open and tell you things, and he'll be honest with you, and that's one of the
Yeah. Yeah.
things that I think really attracts me to Icom is when they do that. And I also think too, when you go back, for customer service,
Hmm.
Yesu's done pretty good from what I understand. I've never had interactions with them, but I've had some interactions with Icom, and they've been good. I've been pretty pleased with their response and getting back to me in resolution. It's all been very fair, very equitable. So my hat is kind of off to them. But I don't favor. Yeah, I probably favor Icom over
Yeah.
Yaesu. For example, I have a 7300, but
Right.
I also have for my HT, I have an FT5D. Okay. It's just that's what I prefer for my HT. That's what's working for me right now. You know,
Yeah. And speaking of DJI, I kind of know the company very well. I know, oddly enough, I know a lot of ex-employees of DJI. um, I could tell you why, but that I know a lot of people from who used to work for the company, and they told me a lot of things. I mean, DJI is always pushing the envelope, but of course they face a lot of headwinds, especially from the US, right?
yeah, yeah.
Especially with the US China relations, kind of put a damper on them. But they make a good product, I think. It's just the geopolitics kind of um, like throws them a curve.
Yeah, I
So,
think you're right with that
yeah,
because, well, one of the things back in, I'm going to say 2018,
yeah,
um, DJI was still doing launch events,
mm,
and I got invited to the launch event over in Brooklyn, over at the Duggal Greenhouse for the Mavic 2, and I got to meet the who's who. I got to meet Billy Kyle. I got to meet Ed Ricker.
yeah,
I got to meet Kelly Shores from Ready Set Drone. There was just a whole slew of people that were there. Also got to meet the presenter Michael. He was one of the product managers there who actually did the presentation that day. And as it was, that was the last time DJI's done a live presentation. COVID hit and then everything. And then they realized something, I think, too, is they could save a lot of money just by doing it online. I mean,
Right.
and that's how they've done it since then. And I take that experience, and I try to look to see how, for example, how Icom and Yaesu do things like that, and these announcements. So
Even Apple now is doing all their events online.
Yeah, which is really interesting because I'm like, I looked at Samsung and I'm like, okay, it was, you watch their events, and one of the things that we talked about, and it's just a quick sidebar because I know you're a technology type of person. One of the things that we talked about on the drone show is, technology gets to a certain point, and it's like, what else can you do? And we were talking about that not only with drones but also with smartphones. Okay. What else can you do? I have one of my phones is a Z Fold 3, which is great. And then I have an S22, which is great, but the camera's better, we're going to add this feature and that, but you reach a certain point. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you think the same? Go ahead.
No. And do you think the same what?
Do you think the same thing is we're getting to that same point in ham radio that we're, what new feature can be added that everybody's going to have that you didn't know that you wanted, kind of thing?
I think so with HF ham radios, a lot of the stuff you've seen is kind of like, you're reaching the point where it is you're kind of reaching the limits on some things. Like HF ham radios, in terms of like performance, you're kind of reaching that limit now. The other things is that remote operation, you're kind of reaching that limit now because you have like Flex and Icom and the others have built-in remote capability now. I'm not sure what else there is. I think I mean, I don't know what else. I mean, there's like, Flex has kind of like brought out this whole integration with Ethernet. So you connect your radio to the LAN, and then you connect your amplifier to the LAN, to be quite honest, and you just connect RF cables, and you connect everything there. Icom supposedly has that control too with some of its upcoming products. I really don't know. I think what's going to happen probably is there's going to be some like this innovative stuff what Icom brought with the power over Ethernet transmitter module. I think you're probably going to see some more of that. What I think you might see, and this is not based on any inside information I have from anybody. Anything I know about insider stuff, I can't tell anybody. But this is something I speculate based on how Icom did with the 905, is that they I could see manufacturers doing like broadcast equipment and producing radios with low power out, and then you have an amplifier module, and this way you save on money, you save on power consumption, and you have things like that. I could see more fully software defined radios, even more software defined than they are now. Probably, but for ham radio, for traditional ham radio, I don't see anything more than that. I could see probably exploring new frontiers and niches, but I really don't know, to be honest. Right. And some of this actually is hampered by US regulations. Like, for example, we have that 15 dB amplifier rule that has been on the books for a long time, and the FCC is just sitting on it. We might see some stuff. I think what we might see is like data capability to do like probably like WinLink or something like that, more integrated into a radio.
Yeah, and that would be fantastic. One of your recent videos, and it prompted me to do something, was, okay, I have a wonderful desktop. I just bought a laptop around the holidays, and it's an HP, and it's has all the bells and whistles, but one of the things, it's 5G capable. So I
Right.
have I have a SIM card in it. But then I saw one of your recent videos on the laptop, and
The Evolve 3, yeah.
that really prompted me. So I went ahead and I ordered one. It was 179 from Best Buy, and I ended up getting a 1 terabyte, SSD, um, solid state card to put in there, because I think, I wanted to have something that's 100% dedicated to ham radio. And I think,
Yeah.
and I watched your video and I watched the software that you ran it, and I said, you know what, I think, this can handle it. And I'm going to make sure that I put a good enough,
Yeah.
terabyte SSD in there to go ahead and handle that. So I'm excited. It just came tonight, right before
Right.
the show. So, I'm excited to get that fired up. And, and like I said, it'll be something,
Yeah.
when I go out and do POTA, that'll come with me. If I go somewhere, that'll come with me. It'll be nice to have that, because, I, I was trying to imagine hooking it up to my desktop, and all the cables under there and everything. I'm like, no, 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 no.
So let me tell you something that just crossed my mind. I think for D-Expeditions, this radio in a box concept where you airdrop a radio onto a remote island and then string up, unfurl a vertical antenna or something, and then leave that, and then go from the comfort of the ship and have a microwave link. I think that's going to be a new frontier that's explored by probably radio manufacturers. But I don't think that's going to have a widespread user acceptance, unless people, decide that clubs, like, Smoke and Ape here was saying 905 is going to be a club radio. I think probably what's going to happen is you might have that as a club radio. You put that up on a hilltop, and then you plug in an Ethernet, and then it's kind of like Flex, but the Expeditions, they airdrop like a little container or something like that, and able to do that remote in a box concept.
That's very interesting that you bring that up. And Eight brought up a good point. You'll probably see, that's probably where a lot of people will get their first taste of it. Will be some clubs will go ahead and bite the bullet and do that, and get a 905 and get it up on a hill and get it hooked up. And I think, that will probably spur some interest. So, like I said, I think some people are going to be, at first, they're going to be like, a lot of my drone, subscribers are, they're going to hold back. They're going to watch. They're going to see, everybody's experience with it, and then make a decision. But, knowing Icom, it's going to be a well done product. And one of the things that, it's going to be, it may take a couple of software firmware updates, but I think it will be good. And one of the things that was real interesting was I had Steve on from Temporarily Offline, and we talked about the 6100 and how he just dove into it when it first came out. I mean, he was, I said, you weren't up to your ankles, you were up to your neck in it, and with the firmware and everything. And and he said right now he's kind of meh on the radio, and he's expecting a little bit more out of Zygoop. But the effort that Zygoop put forward with that, I thought was good. I think they can still do a lot more with the software with that. And I think that will be, that'll make an affordable QRP kind of radio for some people.
I think so. I do think there's some hardware problems with that radio. I do think that, when KMRD Mike, he explored some of the things where it was producing spurs and birdies and such like that inside of it. I think, they need to have a little more polish in the product. I know, like, for example, somebody like Icom has been around a while, and they have a well-developed, well-polished product. Whereas Zygu, kind of like, they have this product, and it works, but it has some rough edges.
Yeah. And well, I know one of the other things was the heat dissipation from it as well, too. A lot of people had to buy heat sinks for it, and and everything. But conversely, I see a lot of people having some, what I'll call, a moderate amount of success with the G90. It's really kind of a no frills kind of a thing, but it does work for a lot of people. And and it's, I think that's a stepping stone kind of radio, because it's 20 watts. So, it's a little more QRP, but it's not quite full 100 watts. And I
Yeah.
think that's the kind of radio that's a stepping stone kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's good that they have this kind of radio and it exists at that price point, especially. It's not $1,000 like a 705. Well, I think a 705 is a little more than $1,000, but they copied the Icom mic. They probably use the same molds in the factory.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's absolutely too funny. Well, I know one of the things one of my friends told me, said, you know what, if you get the 6100, first thing you need to do, throw that mic out, okay? Because
Yeah.
it's garbage, okay? And he was telling me some things too. He's had some good luck with it. Of course,
Mhm.
he's a guy. I told you, before the show started, I've been in IT, but he's a guy that's into Linux, and I'm like, okay, you know what, time out. That's a foreign language to me. Don't even go there, because I have no idea about it at all. It's just one of those
Yeah.
things. I'm just not there. So,
Yep.
um, you know, I gotta thank you. Our hour's up. I gotta thank you for coming on the show. I would definitely love to have you back on again.
Sure.
I really love your take on things. Um, you know, and what you're doing with your channel, and you just you're doing it all, and you're doing it very well. And
Yeah.
I'm excited about the name change for you. I think that's a good thing. I think you're going to get, you should get more subscribers. I'll tell you that right now,
Well,
because
yeah,
right.
I'm kind of hoping, people come and see it, but it was more for the radio show. And what WRMI Legends is doing, they're doing some good stuff. So support them too. They're in 5050 shortwave.
Definitely. Ria, thanks so much. Hang on for a little bit here after we're done. Guys, thanks so much. 7 threes to everybody. And remember, it's always a great day to make a QSO.